Hey guys, what's up? It's Greg Srivasti with the Deepest Dream podcast. For this installment, I have an interview with Ella Thomas. She's an actress, producer, and co-writer of the movie No Mercy. And No Mercy is spelled Know Mercy. It's a very empathetic, sympathetic, insightful look on here's the IMDb plot summary in one line. Quote, 600 years of life for one moment of mercy. That 600 years of life goes to this person named Hanuk, played by Xavier Avila, and he's Avila, I believe. He's very good in this movie. And Hanuk is a guy who is he a guy or maybe he might be a being? I'm not going to say which it is. He is a person who has immortality and he's lived those 600 years trying to observe humanity and his relationship to the fellow human beings that he comes across obviously during the 600 years. Now, most of this movie deals in the present day where Hanuk leads a pretty moderate, humble life. He has a best friend named Arnold. Arnold is played by Paul L. Davis. He is a very good actor, scenery stealer, and I mentioned Paul L. Davis during my interview with Ella Thomas, and yeah, he'd be very, in my opinion, very memorable in this movie. Xavier Xavier Avila, I'm mispronouncing the name. He's so good as Hanuk as well. He has the weight on his shoulders to carry this narrative, which is a mixture of sci-fi and drama. And within an indie budget, that's a pretty epic ask for the producers. One of them obviously being Ella Thomas and the director slash writer producer as well, Purdell Richardson. The movie is directed by Purdell Richardson and Ella Thomas and someone named Sayre, Sayre. Should have done my research on Sayre. Those are the three writers for No Mercy. What you have to know, though, is it's a pretty ambitious film because there is a little bit of faith in this movie. There's sci-fi stuff. There's supernatural material. There is possible criminal acts or actions in No Mercy. And there's also a possible romantic drama because there's a woman named Alicia, played by Anaya Williams, and she's good in this movie as well. Alicia is a troubled waitress at a diner who has an abusive boyfriend, and she finds herself taking a direction in the right turn when she strikes up a friendship with Hanuk. That's one of the different plot elements behind No Mercy. We don't really get into the plot stuff of No Mercy with my interview with Ella. This is, I think, one of the longest interviews I've done within the last 20 some odd years. It's a 36-minute interview with Thomas because the reason why it's pretty long, at least for in my sakes, I'm my cinematics podcast partner, Eric Holmes loves going 20, 25 minutes. I'm usually 10 to 12 minutes, maybe even 7 minutes for most of my podcast interviews. But this one with Ella was different because we not only talked about No Mercy, she breaks down her job in the movie as a producer and learning and not being intimidated by the big producer hat she had to wear for this project. And she explains why in the interview, why she was not daunted whatsoever. And then she also elaborates on her two previous acting projects. One of them is Desperation Road, a film co-starring Garrett Hedlund, along with Thomas and Mel Gibson. What is her name? Willa Fitzgerald? I believe Willa Fitzgerald is in Desperation Road as well. If you can find it on streaming anywhere or whenever it's streaming, immediately watch this movie. Ella Thomas, actually, I knew about her a little bit because I remember her in Desperation Road. And during the interview, I asked her about that film because there's a sequence that she had with Garrett Hedlund. And while I was watching Desperation Road, I was blown away by that scene she had with him. And I looked her up because I was wondering what more films I could watch her in. And lo and behold, 2 months later, I'm interviewing her for No Mercy. So she elaborates on that film, which is, by the way, directed by Nadine Crocker, great filmmaker. She also did a movie. What was the movie that she did before Desperation Road? I think it was called Continue, right? Yeah, so Nadine Crocker is a great filmmaker. Purdell Richardson, as far as No Mercy, does a pretty great job with his indie project, he has a lot of balls juggling in the air with the whole faith and sci-fi and drama and crime and romance. And I believe this movie is less than 92 minutes, 90 minutes. I think it might be somewhere like 82, 83 minutes. It's a really well done film. Really enjoyed it. My heart is, I am biasly pulling for all indie filmmakers out there to push their stories. And when the stories work, like No Mercy for me, it's an added push for me, and I'm even more excited. By the way, my babbling means nothing, because here's to bolster or maybe pique your interest regarding No Mercy. It won the grand prize for Best Feature at the Culver City Film Festival. The Culver City, if you do not know, people, it's a city in Los Angeles. I used to live in Culver City for a couple of years. Culver City was, I think, what was the, how do I say this? Culver City, when people think of Hollywood, they think of bright lights, movies, fame, the Oscars. And yes, the Oscars are held in Hollywood. The Walk of Fame is in Hollywood, right? And with the footprints and the handprints, all that stuff is in Hollywood. So Hollywood, when you think of Hollywood, you think of glitz and glamour, bright lights, people coming to Hollywood to follow their respective movie and television ambitions. All that said, in Culver City, it is I think it was called the heart of Screenland. That is, when you think of movie history, a city that is often overlooked. From people who do not know much about LA history, Culver City is overlooked. Okay, so when you think of Culver City Film Festival, I have not attended that film fest, but I hope that film fest continues or gets even bigger and bigger every year, because Culver City is, like the nickname suggests, the heart of Screenland. It's been really developing over the years, but for history's sake, Culver City used to be the site of MGM. It's currently the site of Sony. Sony Studios is over in Culver City. Also, what else? There used to be Raleigh, not Raleigh Studios. There used to be another, parts of Gone with the Wind were shot in Culver City as well. There is a place called the Raintree County Condominiums, which is on a street in Culver City, a big street on Culver City. I believe that street is Jefferson Boulevard. When you think of Raintree Condominiums, the reason why it's called Raintree Condominiums, the movie Raintree County, starring Montgomery Clift and Elizabeth Taylor, was actually shot on that lot before they became condominiums. That used to be an MGM backlot. So there's a lot of MGM history. There's a lot of years that Sony Pictures have been part of Culver City, and even parts back in the day, the silent films. Laurel and Hardy were just one of the many great silent acts that filmed in Culver City way back in the day. I apologize. This is an Ella Thomas interview. The reason why I was waxing poetic about Culver City was I didn't only live there for 2 years. I worked at a radio syndicate called Westwood One over there for almost 20 years. So I know a little bit about Culver City, and it's great. No Mercy, an indie film, won the grand prize Best Feature at the Culver City Film Festival. So that was really cool. And yeah, as far as Ella Thomas, the interview goes, she talks about No Mercy, producing it, what she learned from this project and collaborating with Perdell Richardson. And also she reflects on her work in Desperation Road. And also, last but not least, is the Amy Adams film, Nightbitch. I have not seen Nightbitch yet. It got mixed reviews, but as Ella Thomas talks about towards the end of the interview, this might be a movie that was overlooked by critics, and she specifically said male critics. And also, it might be a movie that, as the years pass, it will get a lot more appreciation. Now, all that said, I believe as of this recording, Nightbitch is available on Hulu. I'm going to have to, let me look right up. I apologize. This is not a really great edited intro. I'm typing up right now, Desperation Road on Just Watch. This is, in my opinion, Desperation Road is a must watch. If you are a fan of Garrett Hedlund and Mel Gibson and Willa Fitzgerald, let's see right now. It's available it's available via rental. It's worth a rental, in my opinion. Fandango at home, Amazon Video, et cetera, et cetera. And Ella Thomas has a very memorable, it's a small role, but there is one really standout sequence between her and Garrett Hedlund. I do not know what role she plays in Nightbitch yet. Really looking forward to watching that. Tell me what you think. Hopefully this interview will get you questioning whether or not to see No Mercy, which is available currently on digital and on demand. And I was going to say something else, and I'm completely blanking. Oh, also, one thing to learn about Ella is she is a huge pop culture geek, and she loves Gene Roddenberry, Star Trek. She wants to be part of, what is it? Fleet Star. She wants to be on the not just Star Trek ship. She wants to commandeer her own ship in one of those Star Trek iterations, and she's just a huge fan of that genre. I believe specifically she calls herself a Trekkie, not a Trekker. I saw that during an interview she did with the wonderful folks over at Film Thread. So am I covering everything in my stupid little head? Yes. No Mercy on digital on demand. Check out this interview with Ella Thomas. It's 30 plus minutes. I apologize for babbling, but there's a couple of really good movies online. Now, No Mercy, Desperation Road, and I don't even know if Nightbitch is great, but it stars Amy Adams. I believe Mariel Heller is the director, so I'm eventually going to watch it, and would love to hear what you guys think of any of these movies. Please hit me up over at my email editor at deepeststream.com. Thanks to Ella Thomas for the 36 minutes of a really great conversation. I apologize, all you listeners. I will make sure my intros to these things are a little bit more tighter next time. Anyways, here is Ella Thomas talking about No Mercy and a bunch of her other stuff and producing and whatnot. Hopefully you have a good time listening to this interview. Well, anyways, I am here with Ella Thomas, actress, most importantly, in my opinion, producer of No Mercy, KNOW, Mercy. Here's the thing. Ella, pleasure to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much for having me on the show this morning.
Yes, no worries. No Mercy. I love the title. Can you just, without giving too much away, talk about the origins of the title? And I think it really speaks a lot. It really stands out.
The origin of the title comes from a line that's actually in the film that the titular character speaks. And it is a reference to, and I think most people understand that because I feel like that's where we are right now. We all need to operate with a bit of compassion, with a bit of grace, have a bit of mercy, no mercy for people that, are walking in different shoes than we are, that have, other burdens that they're carrying us. I think we're in a time where we have to be cognizant of needing to be more tolerant. And some people might call that mercy. Some people might call it grace. We have to practice the pause. And so I feel the title, even though it came from the script, actually really speaks to where we are right now.
Mm. What frustrates me is there's some people who think of tolerance as a sign of weakness. That's the thing that sometimes frustrates me in today's society. In broad strokes, I suppose. So
no, it's actually there's a saying, and I'm gonna absolutely mess this up, but it says for some, equality feels like when you've been in the position of privilege, equality can feel like oppression. So for them, the playing field being feels like the oppression. And it's an interesting thing because our brains want to mine for information, mine for evidence. And our brains also look for things to group together. So I think what we're not understanding in society is that the reason programs exist is not because everybody out there is a bigot, not because everybody out there has a racist agenda. It is that all things being equal on paper, our brains are going to gravitate toward the familiar. And what's familiar in our society is what someone looks like, their financial background. And that is what these programs are trying to help in reality. It's not just, we're just trying to even the playing field. No, we're trying to even out just the basic, function of human nature. But that enough, people are like,
So I really was interested in this character and an interesting actor, but without giving too much away, he's a person who could be very powerful, but I don't know how much you want to talk about the plot, but it's really about not dominating someone else with what the gifts you have. It's sort of observing humanity. Can you speak to that theme? And was that the reason why you wanted to produce this project? The fact that you have a lot of power, you have immortality, but you're not going to lord it over people. You're here to exist with your brother and sister.
What I loved about, well, the concept of the film came through our director, Perdell Richardson, who was inspired through, and he's a person of faith, and he also loves science fiction. I'm a big sci-fi buff. And he wanted to be able to explore the theme without hitting people over the head, without sitting on a soapbox, but it's something that's important to him. And he and one of his best friends had started writing on this project during COVID because they were closer together, and they had brought it to me, but because of COVID and because of the strikes, it just kept getting pushed and pushed. And then finally we were able to come together. And as I was going through it, I said, we have to ground this. We have to ground this in humanity and in realism, so that we can suspend disbelief. We can believe that things would happen. And at the end of the day, Hanok is on a human journey. The journey isn't about the power. The journey is about him understanding himself, which, is the universal thing. We're all trying to figure out who we are and what our purpose is. And that is what I wanted to lean into. But even so, the thing that you touched on, which is really interesting to me, it's one of the themes that Gene Roddenberry employed when he first conceived of Star Trek. And it was so subtle, and he had to hide it from the censors and to get past CBS. But the messaging underneath was always, do no harm, be in the service of learning and equality and, collaboration. So yeah, like you hit the nail on the head in terms of things that inspire me or speak to me.
So Ella, you mentioned the word purpose. Can you just talk about your purpose as a producer, finding that purpose in this project? Because I'm assuming you've done so many things in your life. This must have meant a lot to you personally, because it's not just a producing project about two people who meet in a diner and it's like a walk and talk. I don't know, $50,000 narrative. You actually decided to really go all out for a sci-fi tale with, I'm assuming, a very limited budget. Talk about the ambition behind that, and just really, is it sort of, you only have one life, might as well go for it kind of thing? So
I am the daughter of an immigrant. You know what I mean? Like, we came on a hope, on dreams, on prayer. So I'm never daunted by attempting something new or the task of learning. I'm a film buff. I love all parts of the creative. This was an opportunity. And at the time, I didn't even realize what it would be. But for me, it was boot camp film school, the things that they can't teach you. And in hindsight, I think that a lot of actors and writers would benefit from being on set in different capacities, because it's humbling. And moving forward as an actor, I think I have a deeper understanding, and I've always respected what everybody brought to the film. But understanding the mental load of what they're actually carrying, I think will make me more aware of also how I move in that space. Because moving that X 2 feet means everybody's relighting, means everybody's moving, which means it's not as simple as that. And sometimes you have to, as an actor, be able to find your truth and still just stay in your spot. The character doesn't need to wander at that moment.
You mentioned boot camp filmmaking. What was the hardest part of boot camp from the producer's lens? What was the hardest part for you?
The scheduling. What we did different from what you usually do your budget, and you get the line producer, which we all have 7 different jobs. We couldn't even list them all, otherwise we'd be ridiculous. But the budget constraints and still wanting. My main goal was that even though this was an indie, I wanted it to have the same standards. I wanted us to be respectful of everybody. I wanted us to have the same accessibility to everything that we needed in terms of whether it was wardrobe, food, hair, makeup, safety. That to me was paramount. And I think what was done, the schedule was the hardest, because we would never know what we were shooting. We would raise money during the in between shoot days, and depending how much we had at the end of 11 days going into that 2-3 day shoot, that's what we were doing. If we didn't raise a lot of money, we're doing externals. We're taking the drone, running through Pasadena. We're shooting in the car. And when we were able to get some additional investors, we were able to get the huge sound stage in Burbank at Heritage Studio. But our cast had to stay so flexible because we're calling them 2 days before going, all right, location's locked. This is the scene we're doing. And then we're making adjustments on the fly because instead of a diner, we're now in a restaurant. So those were the things that were, but we just kept like improv, just like, yes, and we can, if we didn't know what we didn't know, to be afraid. Just jump in. And that part was exciting.
I really loved your cast, and it would take too long to go through everyone. Everyone does a good job in this indie film. For me, I'm going to single out, I think, Paul L. Davis.
You probably see him everywhere right now.
Yeah. Well, yeah, along with being an actor, you're also a producer. So great big picture. When you're seeing him either on dailies or when you're in the edit room, he just pops to me. Was that something you already knew before production started, that no matter what, the camera will train to him? He has that. To me, I thought it was really convincing. And with respect to your ensemble, who all do a great job.
What I loved about Paul, I mean, Xavier had a lot of heavy lifting to do as the lead. He really, and because he worked as hard as he did, it made everybody in the cast bring up their A game. They all worked on this like this was a big budget film. And Paul was also working with his real son. And I think it grounded the performance in a place as a father that made him very vulnerable. And I love that he trusted us, that we were going to protect him in scenes. We always gave him the time he needed. We always gave him the space. We started tweaking the dialogue actually to fit who he is as a person, because he's a gentle giant. The man that you see on screen is really who he is, and just a voracious talent, but just left his heart. He gave his heart for all of us to see. Him and Shanique with that scene when it's a day in the life of two parents, but he grounds the story so it doesn't delve off into the absurd. There is his motivation for why he does it. I love the scene in the car between him and Xavier where he tells him, you don't understand. And those are moments like that I personally love, because I think the human spirit endeavors to rise above the human. We always have to ground things in humanity. And I think even if you go into sci-fi, and even if you love fantasy or aliens, which I love all of that, we're talking aliens, Star Trek, Predator, bring it on. If you can mash them all together, even better.
Yeah, there are sci-fi elements in No Mercy, and I just want to, and I appreciate that within an indie budget, but I also appreciate that it's about immortality a little bit, but as you're watching it, you're realizing your own mortality. How are you going to face maybe your final stages? Are you going to sacrifice for the people you love? Are you going to become greedy and want to extend your privilege or what station you are in life? Can you just talk to that? Because I see a lot of immortality type movies, and it's all about the power. It's all about how
Highlander. Remember?
Right? Yeah, you can only be one. But was that always part of it? That sort of like very sort of like subtle fabric that you wove into this. The idea of just looking at yourself and realizing that, especially towards the third act, without giving too much away. So. Yeah,
the theme, I mean, we all face that, whether it's in health, whether it's, in losing people we love, in outliving people you love, or losing people. Personally, I lost my mom very young, and it shifts how you view life. I definitely have a rise above the fray, silver lining type of outlook on life. I've always thought I have a choice. Her her death, I didn't want her death to be the most important thing that happened to me. I wanted her life to be the most important thing that happened to me. And so I think I tried to weave that into the process. And even when we're talking on set, we're talking to the characters, it becomes very easy sometimes when we're talking about the character to the actors, it becomes easy to want to be woe is me and be a victim. But I think we want to see people punching through the darkness. I think we want people going, yes, this is part of it. And you know which movie I love that I thought did it really, really well? Do you remember The Arrival?
Yes.
And when, like, if you knew what was going to happen, would you do it all again? And he says, and he kind of has that moment when he's like, well, if I live in fear and choose not to love, then I'd never get to experience anything. So even after all these years and after all this time, there's an innate understanding, even throughout time, that it's all still worth it. All the pain, all the loss, all of it for the moments of happiness. Did I answer your question?
You answered the question. You did a great job. I don't have IMDb. I think your film won an award over at the Culver City Film Festival. Is that correct?
Yeah, we won.
I used to live. Yeah, can you just talk about that? And I lived in Culver City for several years, so I am biasedly in love with that city. So what was it like to win at that film fest, which I still have to go to one of these days?
The best part about it was that the night so we were nominated for a whole mess of awards, and we all showed up, and slowly but surely they're making announcements, and we're like, oh, okay, well, we're clapping for everybody and getting a little, you're not in it for the award, but we're getting a little demoralized, like, although, like, oh, okay, well, you know what? It's an honor to have been nominated, and look what we did from a small thing. And then they announced the last award of the night, and we're packing it up. I'm talking to them. I'm like, I got school drop off in the morning. And when they announced that No Mercy had won Best Picture, we all, like, almost everybody just froze. We froze because it was unexpected, and it was just, you're not in it for the words, but it meant that the people that had seen it understood it. Because here's the thing, it's an indie film. We're very ambitious. We only had a certain budget, so that means that our elements that are, sci-fi driven are layered to support the story, but it's not a big spectacle. It is, so to be acknowledged in the indie world among your peers for what you try to do was really lovely, because critics are critics. That's their job. They're going to look at films and go, well, this is what was lacking, and this is what was lacking, or this is where we felt it fell short, or this is what was great. But when the audience responds, when the audience for, an hour and 25 minutes, an hour and a half loses themselves in your stories, you go, okay, we did something right. It won't be for everybody. It won't hit everybody the same way. But for us, it meant like they got it. They got what we were trying to do.
So this is just a sort of a sidetrack here. What was your character in Desperation Road?
Oh, my name is Sarah McGee. I was Garrett. I played Garrett Hedlund's wife.
So can you just talk about, I think you're sitting on the front steps of your character's house.
Yeah, you saw it?
Just I love that movie. They're just so, I remember watching that
Crocker
scene.
is wonderful, isn't she?
She's great. She's fantastic. She's fantastic. But I remember watching that, and I think I actually looked you up on IMDb. I go, I haven't seen her in a lot of stuff. I need to see her in more stuff. That's just, so you're looking inside that scene. What was it like shooting that scene, being in the moment? Because that moment, I think, felt really real to me. So what's the key of being real with someone else in an intimate scene, especially in Desperation Road?
Well, Michael Ferris wrote the book, and when I first got the audition, I asked for extra time, and I ran to the book, and I read it in less than 36 hours. And by the time I walked into the audition, I said to myself, I'm like, I don't know who they want for this, but this is mine. I felt connected to the character of Sarah on so many levels. And it wasn't that I've experienced that kind of loss, but I understand loss when you're not in control of what happened to you. And Nadine is wonderful. And we didn't have a lot of takes. It was freezing cold. I met Garrett that day. Like, I flew in with, I didn't know I had the job till 2 days before. It was a call in the morning and they're like, can you leave for Kentucky in 24 hours? And I went, I'm sorry, what? And it's those stories as an actor that you hear, but never think it's really going to happen to you. And I was on a plane to Kentucky, did a fitting the next day, and was on set by Monday. And we had a couple more scenes that ended up not making it in the movie. But the other thing that was very easy is that you sat there and Garrett was so open. Like, we met and we hugged each other briefly, just as a way of connecting. And then I went outside and I just waited for him. And because we didn't know each other well, there was no rehearsal. The anxiety of, I was able to keep the anxiety of just being in the moment and what was going to happen was all very congruous to what the character was feeling like, what is going to happen. And my ability to like suspend disbelief, I don't see, the cameras stop existing for me, and you fall in love and you fall, like, it's all very instantaneous, and you let your heart break. And
that is, yeah.
You just let your heart break.
Yeah, the right thing to do, obviously, would, if you had a lot of time and maybe rehearse and maybe over rehearse. That's what they say in the books, right? But then obviously that's not what happened, and the results are fantastic. Is it kind of weird to know that you didn't go by the book this time and it ended up being pretty much a very seminal kind of scene? So
it is. I feel like that film, because I'd worked, I'd done TV, I played a robot more times than I couldn't count. But what that film did for me as an actor, it really grounded who I am. It's the first time I think I was given the gift of a character that speaks the way I speak, like that, whose cadence lies where mine lies. Like, the rhythm of her life is mine. And I felt like these are the stories I want to tell. I don't care that I'm in a tiny top and it's 12 degrees outside. You forget it all. And it made me fall in love with the art of being part of the filmmaking process again, because it gets daunting. We ride waves in this business where you're doing really well, and then there's a strike or a pandemic, or you're a different age, you've had a baby, you've been out for a while. But it was like a reset button for me. And I really found my lane, I think, is the best way I can put it.
We'll find a couple of questions regarding finding your lane with producing an ambitious project like No Mercy, getting a plum and very gratifying role in Desperation Road. Where do you see that lane for you the next several years? If, obviously there are things we can't control, but has that lane changed for you just because of these type of experience and growing, of course, as a person? And you're talking about being a parent, of course, all that stuff too.
Yeah, I've always had such a respect for actors who could write and also direct. What Mel Gibson did on Braveheart has always fascinated me, because it's difficult to set everything up and then let everything go and just trust that the team that you have in place will capture the moment while you're in it. He is riding horses and directing and all that at the same time. That is a skill level that is there. That's why I don't think you see it a great deal. And I realized on this was almost like testing the water, whether I could do it, if I could sit in a scene and just be completely present and not worry about all the things going on, the lighting, the car, the continuity, we're losing light, get to set up, where's B-cam, all of that. And I'm like, oh, I can. It's trust. It's not being as controlling of the process. And just trusting the people that you're collaborating with. So to bookend that question, what I realize is I never wanted to be honest, be like, I'm going to write for myself. I want to do this, I'm going to create the thing that again. And I went, oh, I mean, don't get me wrong. I want to be on Star Trek. I want my own ship in Starfleet Command. Like this will happen. But I'm also prepared to build the world where I have my own ship. What? Just in case, I can't wait on that. And that's what I realized in this process. I'm like, oh, I'm perfectly capable of building that world. And
Ella, how many hours do you have in the day? I'm going to be one of these naysayers, but I'm encouraging you. But I'm just saying, 24 hours, that's a lot of.
It is, because it's dreaming. It's daydreaming, because once you have the right people, it doesn't. How long did it take to do Avatar? How long did it take to do, these movies are years and years of production, but in the interim, I mean, acting is always going to be my first love, and I continue to do that. I love writing, but I also realize where my love of writing stems from. I'm still more of a narrative writer. I love punching up dialogue, because I don't like when dialogue's overwritten. I tend to be like this. I'm the person who's like, can we say less? I always feel like if the story holds true and if the plot is solid, then we don't have to spoon feed the audience. Even as an actor, I don't need a soliloquy. I would rather let the audience be on the journey with me, as opposed to, and that's another thing I loved about what Michael had written in Desperation Road. We didn't have to rehash everything. We didn't have to tell the audience every little thing that had happened. It was all in between the history of these people, and they didn't rush us. We could just sit in it for a second. And sometimes we'd have to, because there was a train that went by and we just sat there, two people just waiting for a train to go by. And then we would keep talking.
It's your Braveheart reference. All Garrett needs to do is just walk up to that farmhouse and then you see Mel Gibson looking out, and that fills up several pages of dialogue, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you get it.
Yes, I kind of get it, but I totally get it. But my final question to you is, again, thank you for your time. But after people watch No Mercy, and this is sort of an impossible question. You mentioned your love of Roddenberry and sci-fi, but can you pick a movie that our listeners can watch, and you would recommend a movie maybe that is very personal for you along your journey, along with being a great movie? So,
there's so many. Oh, the pressure.
Anything that pops up, and yeah, I know that's a horrible question.
No, it's not, because I just was speaking to someone last night about a film that it was on recently again, and people are gonna be like, it's crazy, but it has this thing that I keep talking about. It's a movie called Phenomenon with John Travolta and Kira Sedgwick, and I'd been on with Kira on 10 Days in the Valley, and I always felt like that was kind of full circle, but it's the same theme. It takes faith, and it takes a bit of science fiction, and it's a bit grace, and what are we here for, and what is the human experience? And through this, he doesn't know if it's an alien, a brain tumor, or God, but something touches him, and all of a sudden he has powers. His powers to heal. He has powers, but the thing is it's making him ill. And whereas our character is struggling with immortality, that character struggles with his mortality. And what does he want to leave in the wake of, what he's discovered? But it's beautiful. It's a beautiful film. I can't even, it's so, I would be hard pressed to tell you what year it came out. But
somewhere in the 90s, I'm assuming.
Phenomenon. Yeah.
Phenomenon. Okay. And I know No Mercy is a recommendation. Desperation Road is a recommendation as well for you and for me. But can you also, from your own resume, maybe a TV project or another film, another project you work on, that you would lead our listeners to from your own resume as well, that you might think is underrated or whatnot?
You know what I love right now that what was interesting is that women understood it immediately. I'm in Nightbitch, which is the Amy Adams film that's was in theaters and now on available on Hulu. And there, it's a glimpse. But it's a very real glimpse, and it's interesting how misunderstood I feel certain aspects of the film are. Because it's not an indictment of men, it's not an indictment of motherhood. There's a very distinct shift in who you are, and it is, you almost are a bit feral for a while because your brain, like what happens to your brain during that time? And I don't know if that was necessarily understood. It was like, come and take a peek of what it's actually like before we leave the house and we do all this and we did. So I think there was this kind of idea, especially I felt like there was not a lot of grace given to it by male critics. They felt very hit over the head with the hapless, husband thing. And it's like, no, that's supposed to be satirical. But here's the thing. There's also an element of truth in there, but it's being used as hyperbole. Obviously we didn't. So the elements of the fantastical that happened to her, very subtle. It's not over the head. We're not turning into werewolves. That's what I think in between the book and the film and the humor. The film also has so much humor that it's enjoyable. I just wish that people had a better idea, I think, of what they were going to see. Because I think they thought it was either a horror film or, a sci-fi kind of woman turning into an animal. But it's a dramedy at its heart. It's a peek into existence. It's a coming of age for women type of story.
That feels like a project, and I apologize for missing it last year. It feels like a project that maybe as time goes on, people will reevaluate or maybe look at it through different eyes, and it'll continue to gain momentum, I suppose, because it's such a special and singular project, I'm assuming. So
yeah, and Amy Adams, we all know she's fantastic. And it's not that it's because the physical transformation. If you've ever sat across from her in a scene, her eye colors literally changes right in front of you with the depth to which she's immersed in a character. Her eyes change. It is, and those are the things where you just admire the talent and the craft. And people really came around to it on Hulu. Like they were like, it was, I think, either number 1 or 2 when it finally went to streaming. But it is. The industry is it all moves so fast. The appetite for new, the appetite for what else is, and we don't give
that's too much, yeah.
Yeah, we don't give things opportunity to blossom. We treat it almost like fast food, like it's disposable. And there's some real, just the amount of talent. I get to work with really amazing people. I will say that where this current path, every single set I've had the opportunity to be on, I've walked away going, oh, that's amazing. This is amazing. I get to do this. Like this, like I would happily sit and watch other people's scenes with popcorn and like a straw. Like it's just so good. People are so good.
Ella Thomas, producer, actress of No Mercy, available now on what, digital and on demand. Is that correct?
Yes, on all platforms and cable, Spectrum, Comcast, the Dish Network. We're there. Find us. Throw a dart, you'll find us.
Thanks again for your time, and looking forward to interviewing you in a couple of years when you have your own Starfleet and crew.
Yes, come aboard.
I will definitely come aboard. You take care.
I'm going to beam you up. I'm just going to fly over wherever you are, and it's like, you ready?
You better let me on the ship. Oh, yes, go ahead.
Are you watching Paradise?
Oh, is that on Hulu? Where is that?
It's on Hulu.
It's a great actor. Who's the lead in that? That's
Sterling K.
Brown, right? Yeah. Great. One of the greats.
It is. It's because my other, like, okay, besides sci-fi, it's like the dystopian future, like where we all tear it to the ground, then we got to figure it back out. Love that. I did not know when I started the series that's what had happened and where it was going without giving anything away. You have to. It's so just roll with like the first 5-10 minutes. You're going to be like, what's happening? Why is the lighting so bright? And then you figure it out and you're like, oh, that makes sense. Yeah, highly recommend. That and then Yellow Jackets. I'm back on Yellow Jackets right now.
I'm back on Yellow Jackets.
Yeah.
Stop giving me recommendations. I'm never going to leave the house. I'm already a hermit. So.
I know, it's like, but I always love these actors, like, because they're like, yeah, I don't watch anything, and I'm like, I watch everything. Everything, movies, TV, books, script, everything, a podcast, a TikTok. I watch. How are these people like, yeah, I just don't. It's like, I don't even own a TV. I'm like, you got a phone and a computer and screens. Stop it.
All right, Ella, it's been great chatting with you. All right, you take care.
Bye. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye. You too. You take care. It was fun. Great.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.